Hello and welcome everybody to the second heat in this year's Gallery of Guitar competition. I hope a lot of you were watching yesterday and saw what a fantastic first heat we had, what a great level and just an amazing celebration with our jury. And I welcome back my co-host Kate Botello. Hey Kate, how you doing?
I'm wonderful, Matthew, and so excited for today. If yesterday was any indication, we are in for another 8 fabulous performances, and I do not envy our panel one bit.
No, it was absolutely amazing. And we also had just such a host of new pieces introduced to us, which was just a real, pleasure because we're getting to hear from the students or the, people participating in the competition. We're getting to hear the music they want to play, the music they love and they really are committed to. And we saw that last night, right? The commitment.
Oh, complete commitment. We saw so much emotional, involved, beautiful concert level playing last night.
Absolutely.
And I think another reason to watch this competition is not only to just hear new artists, but to hear new music you've never heard before, and also to learn things about the guitar from our panel that you may never have thought of, whether you play or not, or you're competing or not. It's all just really fascinating together.
Absolutely. That's what it's all about. It's all about getting people feedback immediately after they perform, so that each person that's played can really see how their music and their performance is coming across. And that means that yourselves all watching at home, please, by way of comments, let people know that you're enjoying the performances, the new repertoire that you're hearing, the style of performers, and get behind your favorites as we go through heat number 2 today. As Kate said, another 8 players to hear this afternoon, and then we move on to our final 8 this evening. But I think it's time to bring in our panel of judges today. And each jury member today has actually done this competition before, last year and last night as well. So I'm going to welcome from Iceland, Svanur Vilbergsson. Hey Svanur, how you doing?
Hey, how's it going? Really happy to be back with you. It's a fantastic competition. Yeah.
Oh, well, we're delighted to have you back. And you're in Iceland just now. You're outside Reykjavik or just in Reykjavik? Where are you?
Yeah, based in Reykjavik in my sort of David Lynch set living room.
It's very cool.
Where I report from. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, it's great to have you back with us, and we've got a host of great players for you to listen to today. So we're going to make a move over the Atlantic and invite Matthew Cochran all the way from Michigan. Hey!
Hello, everybody. How are you?
We're very well. We're delighted to have you back. You were you're a veteran of this competition from last year. You and Svanur, both of you.
We're grizzled now. Yeah.
Did you catch anything of last night's heat? Did you catch a little bit? Did you see what the level was like?
Yes, the level is incredible, and I can't wait to see what we've got on offer today too.
Yeah, that's going to be incredible. Okay, and then welcoming back from yesterday, a man who is absolutely a stalwart of this year's competition because he's actually listening live to all 3 heats, Stephen Mattingly.
Hello, glad to be back. Looking forward to another 8 great performances.
Oh, great to have you back. And that office of yours is looking even tidier than it was like yesterday. I think you've already been doing a bit more work on it,
It's coming along, exactly. Yeah. Pack up moving time.
Oh, wonderful. Well, as our audience start joining us today for the first of the heats, we welcome them as well. The format is exactly the same as it was yesterday and as it was last year. The performers' videos are played, and then the jury get a chance to sort of discuss after. The competitors have been asked to put together a contrasting program of free choice. So that's really the only stipulation, is that they have to play it, and choose music that contrasts. And they're trying to do it in one single continuous take, so we can see how these players are putting themselves through their paces. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Kate, and we're going to introduce our first performer of Heat 2.
Okay, folks, please welcome up next, or starting out, Evangelina Terris. She is from Russia, and she'll be playing a couple of pieces for us. We'll be hearing the Barcarolle No.2 by Francis Cagnan and the Grand Overture by Mauro Giuliani. She chose to play the Barcarolle because she enjoys the mood and the flow of the piece, and the Grand Overture is something her teacher suggested. It's more technical and large scale. She says it greatly improved her skill set. The guitar she's playing is an Alhambra 7P Classic. For a fun fact, she enjoys painting, and on her pizza, Good choices, mozzarella and basil. Another outstanding start to the competition. This is going to be a fun day. So some beautiful music performed there by Evangelina, Michael Ritchie, the luthier. His tomatoes are loving it. Svanur, do you agree with Michael Ritchie's tomatoes?
Sorry?
What did you think of the piece?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't hear the last thing. Yeah, I thought it was really very impressive. Especially the way of music or use of dynamics, creating tension and structure on the Giuliani. And in the first piece, I was really impressed with just the voice separation, and I thought it was beautiful use of colors. If I could maybe say something that could improve, maybe is would be in the Giuliani to kind of, when there's a new section, to kind of introduce it a bit more and give it space, say that it's coming back, a new recap or things like that. But overall, really, I was impressed. Yeah.
Excellent. Matthew Cochran. Thank you, Svanur. Your notes.
Well, this is the second competition that I've been on the panel with Svanur, and everything that he said I've agreed with. Very good separation, again, between the melodic content and the inner voices on the Klinians. I thought that was a really great way to bring out, I think, all that is good in that piece. Also, the clarity of the harmonics at the very end of the Klinians, I thought, was really quite remarkable. The Giuliani, again, I thought was really lovely. Excellent contrast in themes. I also would like to hear a bit more of an introduction of new ideas in the contrasting sections, and maybe a bit of work on the shifts, just sort of getting the accuracy where it needs to be. Having said that, it's a very, very difficult piece, and these are live performances, and so excellent work overall.
Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Stephen, what were your thoughts with Evangelina opening heat number 2 there?
Yeah, we're off to another great start, and Evangelina has shown us 2 contrasting pieces. One that is very well known in the guitar repertoire, anyway. And I think there's a lot of courage in that, and wisdom in her teacher's recommendation to play this piece as a means of technical elevation. It's one of those pieces that certainly you can't come away from it with any successful performance without having gotten better as a guitarist from both the musicianship and technical sides. One of the things I was most impressed with in her performance was the patience with which she approached it. Both of the comments so far have mentioned kind of setting up new themes a little bit. I think musically, I certainly agree with that. But just from the amount of times I've heard this piece as, its abbreviation, Grand Overture, it spells go. And everyone wants to go and rush and get faster and faster and faster. And it almost becomes like comically impossible to keep up with. And she avoided that trap. And I thought that was really quite a mature approach.
Yeah, that's very insightful, because I think that's one of the things she was able to come back to the tempo that she'd sort of set. That tempo primo was in evidence, pretty controlled throughout. But maybe, thinking about what you've all sort of tapped in on there, maybe, at that stage in Evangelina's education and her listening now, maybe listening to some of those 19th century operas to which they have these fantastic overtures. I'm thinking like the Magic Flute, the Marriage of Figaro, these kind of things. Listening to all this style of classicism, of this classical operatic repertoire, and seeing what the orchestra does, in that comical style. You could also listen to some Tom and Jerry cartoons, because they have exactly the same thing at the beginning of all of those as well. But, she did such a great job, like you've all said, of opening the show. It's really, really a great way to get us going this afternoon. So thank you all for your comments coming in for Evangelina in the chat. Make sure you're supporting our guitarists all the way through the heats today, because they're reaching you out there as a global audience, as well as our panel here today. So let's move on to competitor number 2. We have Ayaka Mukaiyama. No, this is my pronunciation, Ayaka, so you're going to have to bear with me. Ayaka Mukaiyama. I hope I got that right the second time there. And Ayaka's hailing from Japan and Kazakhstan. It's a really international competition this year. I'm delighted to have seen performers from all over the world entering. Ayaka has chosen to play Napoleon Kost's Les Départs. We actually heard that yesterday as well. And then La Jolla from Vincenzo Ancencio's Collection Intime. So beautifully contrasting pieces. Ayaka chose these pieces because she loves romantic pieces, and she really enjoys working on them. I think getting as much out of them as she possibly can. In terms of her guitar, it's by an Italian luthier called Mirko Miglioroni. And it's a double top cedar guitar and has a beautiful warm tone. And she speaks 5 languages and loves traveling around the world. And her recent visit was Ireland, which is where I am right now. So a lovely place to come and visit. And in terms of pizza, it's an absolutely classical choice here. The topping is mozzarella.
Well, both the audience and Ayaka really absorbed in that performance. That was fascinating to watch. Stephen Mattingly, let's go to you. What are some words you have for Ayaka?
Well, it's a really mature performance that's put together here from the coast, which we're familiar with from yesterday's Heat. One of the things I noticed was the sensitivity to line. There was a beautiful treatment for the appoggiatures that are throughout that piece. And the handling of the accompaniment, I thought that it's a very difficult thing that we do on the guitar when we have something like an accompaniment in the bass that needs a different treatment in articulation than in the melody. We're doing that with two different articulations in the same hand in some cases, and I thought it was very well handled here, and really appreciated that energy in the Ascensio. Great contrast.
Great, thank you, Stephen. Svanur.
Really, yeah, I agree. Very mature approach, and was very impressed with just the passion and the expressivity of rubato playing of the first piece, especially, and the phrasing, and just congratulations on that. Also, the articulation in the faster section of that first piece, I thought it was a big contrast, and it was very clear, and yeah, I can only say, very nice.
Great, thank you. Matthew Cochran, did Svanur steal all your notes again?
Yes, yeah, and I'm happy for it. Yeah, really. I mean, the pacing is just excellent. A lot of maturity in the phrasing. There's a feature in Ascensio's music, particularly his faster tempi. He loves to place a slur on the upper note of the first string, and sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to get through that slur and then into the whatever is left of that scalar passage, and that created just a couple of little tripping points, but I mean, it would create a tripping point for literally anybody. Overall, just an excellent performance at a very, very high level. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Great comments, Judy. Fantastic. So yeah, I know, and this is part of the I think the difference of this format is that players are hearing immediately, what people think. They're not sort of left wondering for hours, days, weeks, maybe they never hear from the jury. These insights and these little things that can all help. Those things about just the slurs on the top string, all these little technical things and musical things and expressive things are so important. Now, part of what we do when we put this show together and all these different heats is we reach out to each competitor, and that's how we know what pizza they like, what guitar they play, different things. Now, some people have replied, and some people are a bit enigmatic. They just leave it to us to work everything out for ourselves. And our next competitor is leaving us to work things out a little bit as well. That's Mihail Mihaylov. And we're just going to play Mihail's video and let you see it and perform it. Now, one little bit of housekeeping about the competition. One of the rules, and there are very few rules here, but one of the rules is that we want the competitors to just play in one take. And I'm not quite sure that Mihail knew exactly that rule spot on when he recorded his video. So you'll see that they are actually 3 separate pieces joined together. But we've had a chat about that, Mihail and I, and the jury are all aware of that. And we're still going to enjoy his performance. We take everything into consideration. And of course, the jury are well aware that he hasn't quite done exactly what was asked in this case. But that doesn't mean we're not going to hear him and we're not going to let him perform. So the enigma that is Mihail. There we go. There we go. Wow, what a great job there from Mihail. I'm going to come to Matthew Cochran first and get your thoughts on that, smorgasbord of repertoire that was put together there. Because we didn't have the info before, I was sort of updating people as we went there. The first movement of Ciaran's Sonata for guitar, and then we moved into the first etude by Giulio Ragondi, and then we finished with the Villa-Lobos Etude 7. Really contrasting repertoire. What were your thoughts, Matthew?
Well, yeah, he certainly read the brief on contrast. I thought it was very well prepared and a good dynamics as well. I think if there's one thing that was a through line in all three pieces, it's that there is a number of single line items in all of those pieces, and all of the single line stuff. I had a similar comment, which is really I felt like the sub phrases were very well considered, but the sort of macro area didn't have quite as much direction as I would like. So we would have these like little rise and fall bits in the smaller phrases, but the longer phrases themselves seem to kind of run out of steam at times. In the Villa-Lobos 7, for example, we really want to hear that line going all the way to the very end. Yeah. Same thing with the Torina. It does sort of meander downward, those single lines, but we want to feel that it's headed somewhere. And I think Mihail has all of the capacity to do that technically. So I look forward to hearing how he can work on that in the future.
Yeah, well, that's very interesting, feedback there, because I think, like, even just this idea of recording in one take as well, those three, if they were all in the one sitting, then perhaps he's even going to start to think about drawing those longer phrases out that you're looking for. I couldn't agree more. And if we can go to Iceland and speak with Svanur, what were your takeaways there from Mihail's playing?
Well, Matthew just paid me back, and he had my comment there. One of them.
Serves you right.
I had written would benefit from more like kind of directional flow and tempo, like going towards a certain place, But on the other hand, I was impressed by a very kind of calm, concentrated performance. It's just the gesture and. But maybe lacking a bit of the excitement, which he could add to it,
the drama.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought, I'll come to Stephen on this as well, but I think, it's really important, especially at probably the stage that Mihail's at, just judging by where he is with these pieces at this stage, to sort of pay particular attention to the score. Because I think, I'm sure we all picked up on this a little bit. There was a few misreadings here and there with notation and things like that. And it's just, making sure you've got the right edition. We live in a world now where so much of this music can be so easily attained, online, and thinking about the Villa-Lobos editions that are out there that can just have, absolute perfect accuracy on what these note choices were within chords and melodic lines. And I think that, what do you think, Stephen? Is that a fair comment from me there? Just sort of looking for Mihail to address that a little bit?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's a fair point to make for all of us with the ubiquity of access to music. The thing that also happens, unfortunately, is we become almost siloed to just grab the first thing we find for free online. Yeah. And I will just be a strong advocate against that. I remind my students very often that we have a stellar music library in this building where physical scores are found that are sometimes not the first search result on Google, and I'm not accusing Mihail of doing this, but it's a fair point. Also, whatever score you have, just be very careful to look at the nuances of the score to make sure you're gleaning everything from it. And as a performance, there are many things that Ciaran's Son is a piece of my longtime repertoire. I played it many times, enjoy the piece a lot, and I was surprised to see new things from Mihail's performance that I have not heard from all of my various research into the piece. And the Regandi, what a great piece for the guitar. And I just want to kind of plug one of my very favorite all-time guitar recordings that is one of the reasons I'm still so inspired by the instrument is John Holmquist's Naxos recording of the Regandi. What an amazing, masterful performance that is. So if you haven't listened lately to John Holmquist's performance of that, go do it immediately. After
That's
this.
fantastic. Yeah, well, and also for Mihail as well, that's really a reference recording that he could go to and get, some of that stylistic concerns that John really brings out in the music as well. A lot of people in the chat, Kate, they were all talking about what beautiful sound and what a beautiful tone was on display.
Yes, so many. That's just been the random comment throughout. People are loving that, and chat. Please continue leaving your commentary like this. All of these guitarists are coming back and they're watching these streams so they can get this great feedback from the panel and from you. So please continue doing that. As you've all heard, incredibly useful things, whether you're a competitor in this competition or not. These are all great things to take away from you, these nuggets of knowledge for any musician or any guitarist. So keep listening, everybody. You'll probably find something that is useful to you. I think we'll now next move to our next competitor. This is Ciaran McKinven from Edinburgh. And we're going to hear a couple of pieces here. La Source de Leçon by Napoleon Coste. He chose this piece as he finds it to be very thematically and musically interesting and enjoys trying to evoke the various pastoral qualities present within the music in his playing. The guitar that he's playing is a 2020 run Roman Kuznetsov lattice cedar classical guitar. He was introduced to his guitars in 2020 after his guitar teacher purchased one, and then the following year he got one himself. It's one of his most prized instruments. It has an expressive, powerful tone. As well as performing and composing, Ciaran enjoys writing poetry, loves writing in the traditional sonnet. So that's kind of interesting, finding freedom within that structure there. And a very specific pizza choice, vegan pepperoni from Papa John's. Just the one piece. Napoleon
Wow.
caused but multiple
Oh.
movements, so we
Yeah,
had different things to listen to.
Bravo, bravo. Very, very good playing from Ciaran there. Really, really enjoyable. If I could go to Matthew first for your initial thoughts there on Ciaran's performance.
Well, there's a lot of contrast within the piece.
Mhm.
And I think to that extent, it matches the brief. I think what we're thinking as far as selection of music, that we should have maybe multiple pieces by multiple composers.
Mhm.
Having said that, it's very, I think, considered patient playing. And there's a ton of really great material, especially in the transitions. I mean, the themes are so well developed on that piece, and
Mhm.
and I think that and I think the performance really bears that out. But I also think that there's a lot of really great material in the transitions themselves, and that can use just a bit of attention, I think, because I think if that got developed, the performance overall would just be really, really spectacular.
Mhm. Yeah, very good comments. And Svanur, what were your takeaways there?
Well, what struck me mostly was like his style of playing, which I really liked. It was kind of airy attack, very light, at least on the video coming over to Iceland. It seemed like, quite an easy, breathy playing, but maybe, when it was technically difficult with octaves, fast octaves and something, you could kind of feel maybe that's what the mind was focused on, and not maybe room to do something with it, which is totally understandable. It was really, really difficult stuff, and but I really like the whole, the general style of playing. Really beautiful. Yeah.
I think Phil mentioned in the comments that he liked how Ciaran was sort of playing with the acoustic, and this came up yesterday, Kate, didn't it? Talking about, if you've got a lovely venue, which you're lucky enough to perform in and record in, or if you're just recording in sort of a normal room. But it was interesting to see Ciaran, he was sort of responding to the sound.
Mm.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's about being really present. And I think that was one of the overall really important notes I thought was really fascinating. It's not about so much where you are as being very present wherever you are. And I think working in the acoustic there with that was a really good example of that. Stephen Mattingly, what do you think?
Oh yeah, that's a great comment that we have coming through, and I think one of the big assets of this competition format is to see comments from others, not only the judges, because there are great observations there. And one that I frequently make to my students is to play the room. It has its own resonance. It has its own particular signature. And I thought that this performance really embraced that. If I had any kind of constructive comment to offer, would be on the bass side, remember to mind the basses and damp those when they're supposed to be cut off. And on bar chords, be careful of that first string side, that you get the balance of your weight proper, so you don't have that nasty little spot between the joint that buzzes the string sometimes. But overall, very, very well handled.
That's an interesting point. Sorry, Kate.
It's just interesting from all of you. I think that they can all take away is just the patience and the showmanship of the transition between everything that you do. I'm interested to see how the rest of the competition goes that way, and for everybody to really take that into consideration next year, of just really taking that moment to pause and to breathe in between your different sections and pieces. I think that's just really fascinating.
That's a great point. I wonder as well sometimes if when, a student is preparing for a competition like this and they maybe get to use a hall in their university or their conservatoire or whatever it is. And I recognise that as St Cecilia's Hall in Edinburgh, which is a beautiful hall for a lot of early music. It actually has a little museum of, early instruments there. And it's really nice for guitar as well. In fact, actually, one of Katarina Pratten's guitars is there in the museum. So it's really quite an interesting spot for us guitarists in Edinburgh. And I think, Kieran's been really lucky to play in that room. And of course, to Stephen's point about resonance and watching the bass, suddenly you arrive in a big venue like that and your guitar sounds, $1 million, and you play a note and it rings on forever and it sounds great. And there is a tendency sometimes to let, our best intentions maybe get sort of lost in the music because we're enjoying that reverb so much. It becomes a partner to us in the performance. There's a great bit in a book about Julian Bream, Life on the Road, where he talks about not wanting to try the hall as he gets older in his career. And I think that was because if it was a bad hall, then that got fixated in his mind, and creates a negative energy before the concert. And then, the juxtaposition of that, if it's a really reverberant hall, then you start to take all sorts of liabilities artistically with the music because you've got this great reverb there. So we've got that professional skill to learn as performers, and this is for everybody watching. As you go into those new venues or you try those new rooms or those bigger halls, you still got to think about the choices you made, probably with your teacher at this stage, but the choices also that you value, just like Stephen was saying about resonance and dampening, and it's a really important thing to consider. So our next competitor, we're moving on. We have another enigma, Alfie Bennet. We didn't have any information. We don't know what kind of pizza he likes, if indeed he even likes pizza. We don't know what guitar he's playing, all that sort of stuff. I do know that he's playing some music by Johann Sebastian Bach and some music by Augustin Barrios. So I think it's the second time we've had Barrios in the competition this year. We had some Barrios last night in the heat, and we also had some Bach. Two composers that you hear a lot performed in guitar competitions, and two composers that really do contrast, but also in terms of Barrios, he borrowed a lot from Bach's ideas as well. So there was inspiration there quite often for Barrios from Bach. So next performer is Alfie Bennet. Bravo, bravo. Not an easy piece, the Barrios, at all. Very tricky, and moving straight into it from the back. Svanur, how did that sound in Iceland? How did that sound over there to you?
Yeah, really good. I thought the dramatic kind of build up of the Bach was very convincing. Really caught my attention. Like the only thing there, maybe I would wanted a bit more kind of love and attention to sound, especially of the bass notes,
Yeah.
But I thought the overall, structure, and I thought that was really well done. And really impressive tempo in the Barrios.
Great.
Really
Great
went
tempo,
for it,
right?
And there I thought, dynamically it was really worked well, it's of course very difficult with a barré, when you get these buzzing notes, this piece. So it's on a really good way. He's on a good way towards it, and really impressive.
Yeah, I agree with you as well about this. I think he's on the way with a lot of, I think maybe the control of the Bach is easier than the control of the Barrios at this stage, and as you said, a really brave tempo there with that, but it was, for me, I was just like, it's almost there, for a piece that goes by so fast, it's hard to control all the elements,
Could maybe benefit from a bit more accents on tension notes, and gives you a bit space, and
exactly. And Stephen, what were your thoughts listening to Alfie there?
Fine performance, and as you say, a difficult piece to pull off in the Barrios, especially to get those divisions even. I think that if there's anything that was very evident there is the facility in the right hand that was brought to this performance. It may be just a little bit of work to complement the divisions between the slurs and the arpeggios in that Barrios to make sure they're all very precise and working in unison there. In the Bach, I thought that the dotted rhythms are something that are, of course, up for debate and how you approach them. But overall, a more steady pulse for me is preferable in interpretation of this piece. In particular, what I mean by that is in context of those dotted rhythms, and then to use the flexibility in the scalar passages, and to lead into some of the tendency tones and the that first diminished 7 chord that occurs is a moment that you could arrive at. But in between that, I think we need a little bit more grounding in the pulse.
That's very interesting you say that, because that sort of chimes with Svanur, and he was making that point more in the barrios, not so much about the dotted rhythm, because obviously the rhythm's even in the allegro, but it's what sometimes having the accent can do to give you some space to breathe when the music is getting busier, when it's more congested. So these are great points for Alfie. Fantastic.
Matthew Cochran, what can you add to these points for Alfie?
Well, these are fantastic points, and it's fantastic playing on Alfie's part. In the Bach, my big comment was just to be very, very careful with tuning. In a pre-recorded competition, we've got time to be a bit indulgent on the front end, so it's worth taking just a few extra seconds to make sure that everything's really, really in tune before you start playing. As the Barrios tempo was smoking, really, really good, and Alfie's got all the facility to allow it to happen. And I think as Alfie develops as a player and develops his experience with this piece, it's only going to smooth out. And I'm looking forward to seeing that happen. I feel like this will be really, really solid in a couple of months if he keeps on going in this direction. So congrats.
All right. Thank you, Matthew. So a lot of guts and glory to be had in this competition. Up next, we're going to head to the Netherlands, crooning in the Netherlands with Dylan Prentner performing for us 5 Bagatelles for guitar, the first Allegro by Walton, the Sevillana Fantasy by Turina. He played both of these pieces for a long time. They're very dear to Dylan's heart. He says, I'm a huge enjoyer of Walton's music, and his bagatelles are some of the most colorful music I know of for the guitar. As for Turina, I have a soft spot for early 20th century piano music, and the mixture between that and the influences of Spanish traditional music in Turina's compositions, especially the Sevillana, feels like a perfect match for the modern guitar. As to his guitar, it was built for him on commission by the Dutch luthier Bert Krakel, which was finished in 2024. A fun fact about Dylan, he likes fun socks. We don't know if he's wearing them or not because we can't see them in this performance. And I was surprised that this was not an American answer. What he likes on his pizza is pepperoni and hot honey. Okay, Dylan Prentner. Okay, so as listening to you judges, I have been throughout this competition, and again, we were talking about that transition between the sections and the music. To my ears, I think he was doing a wonderful job with that. Am I right or wrong, Stephen Mattingly?
No, absolutely, you're right. And one of the features of that transition that he did there, just before the grand opening of Rasgueros comes back in the Torina, he had like a minute-long crescendo he was able to tease out over there, and that's difficult to do on the classical guitar. And a few tricks that he employed there were to bring the crescendo up and gently let it come back down before he built it again, and all of that tension just came across and bubbled over. Very, very great performance. And another little thing I'd like to point out to all of our listeners and future competitors: between the pieces, he used the greatest bit of technology for tuning the guitar that has ever been invented. It's called the ear. And he tuned, and it was in tune, and he didn't tune to an electronic tuner and just believe that it was in tune. That's something that I think is kind of beginning to become a trait of our playing, that we look at a piece of technology, as great as it is, and then trust in it, and it's wrong, and then we continue to play out of tune, not hearing that we're, demonstrating poor intonation. And that was not the case here. Great job, Dylan.
All right. Thank you, Stephen. Svanur,
Yeah.
what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. Like, really, I think it's, again, very mature playing. Loved the character changes, really beautiful. And vibrato, tasteful vibrato, and this stuff. If we're thinking about the recording room, it's obviously he's in a really nice echoey, not echoey, but he gets sound back. And so maybe in the first part of Walton, that was not the best for my ears here, because you couldn't hear when there was a super piano chord after a strong chord and these stuff. But then in the slow parts, it was really, really, really beautiful. But overall, like, he was like the second the Torina piece was just evocative and very sensitive, and with these outbursts of energy that it was very impressive.
Yeah, great comments. And it's coming back a little bit to, we discussed a little bit, I think, with Ciaran's performance, because he had that lovely hall. And some things in the hall can really take you by surprise, how reverberant they are, like for harmonics. Maybe if you're practicing in quite a dead room all the time, and then you go to a hall that just has the reverb that can let those harmonics really sing. And to Svanur's point there about, that was a very reverberant room. Maybe the microphone had to be a little bit closer for us to hear some of those clearly very adventurous and really well thought out timbral changes, for us to really get them to come over, the speakers that we're listening to them on, the microphone that Dylan's recording them on. And we mentioned this a little bit last night, because I think one of the comments in the chat from one of the viewers was, does the sound quality influence us as a jury panel? Now, of course, I'm not judging, I'm just here presenting, but I was sort of explaining last night that our jury have recorded so many times themselves in all sorts of different ways, shapes and forms, and they can tell and know from all the different types of recordings that we've got coming in, all of that nuance and all of that subtlety. They can see and they can feel when the players are drawing these sounds out of the instrument. So we're not in any way being sort of bowled over by a recording that, say, is almost like, studio quality, and then a recording that is maybe a little bit more like what the player had in terms of gear at that time to capture their performance. We're looking right in acutely at what they're providing technically and musically. And coming to Matthew Cochran now, who knows so much about recording the classical guitar, maybe you can take this point a little bit further in reference to Dylan's playing, because we could hear all of that timbral variation. We could see it and hear it. It was fantastic.
Yeah, I think it's a very good thing when the player kind of outstrips the capacity of the recording. Or the room, and that's, I think, what came across to my ears. I mean, Dylan's sort of fearless, passionate playing, I think, would be evidenced in almost any room or with any technology whatsoever. The dynamic contrast that he's bringing to his playing, the pacing, all of that, all of that was very present. And one of the things that I like the most about particularly listening to solo music, if it's a solo piano or a solo guitar or whatever, is to kind of forget what the sound is overall and be as focused on the playing and the player as possible. And I think Dylan just managed to not only communicate what Walton and Torina have communicated on the page, but rather also his personality as he's interpreting these pieces. And so I was kind of pleasantly blissed out and not really focusing on any of the other stuff except for the performance. And so I think that's always the thing that matters the most, is that the performance is excellent, and how it's recorded, of course, ought to be just a way to document, a fabulous performance. So yeah, great, wonderful.
Yeah, I absolutely agreed, and a lot of really positive feedback for Dylan coming in the chat as well, and that's so important from all of you listening out there and watching. These are the players of the future. Between Heat 1 last night and what we're hearing today, we've got 2 more players left to hear in this second heat, and then 8 players later on in the day. And the talent is just coming thick and fast. It's so impressive to hear all of these young people. And you are the audience for them out there that they're reaching globally on this platform. So please take your time for the rest of this heat and come back this evening or this afternoon, whatever time zone you're in, to watch heat number 3, because there's fantastic performances and great music in that heat as well. So we're going to move on now and introduce our 7th player of this heat. Our next performer is called Benjamin Gascon, and he was born in Denver, Colorado, in the United States of America, but he's lived in Baltimore in Maryland for the last 8 years. And he's chosen 2 very contrasting pieces: Mauro Giuliani's 6 variations on an original theme, Opus 20, and then Carlos Guastavino's Sonata for Guitar, the first movement, the Allegro deciso e molto ritmico. So the Guastavino and the Giuliani, really contrasting repertoire. Now, what Benjamin says about them is these pieces both feature striking contrasts of emotion, but they do so in interestingly different ways. Well, the short variations of the Giuliani are by and large play a satisfying wit and lyric sincerity. You hear that in the music. The next to last variation is a powerfully somber exception that substantially expands the dramatic scope of the piece. So there's a lot of contrast within the Giuliani in terms of emotion, wit, lyricism, and then this powerfully somber exception. And then in this Guastavino sonata, this first movement, Benjamin talks about it displaying a remarkable dualism of affect. However, rather than demarcating the dramatic gestures into operatic scenes, like we will have heard in the Giuliani, Guastavino seems to weave in and out of feelings in a way reminiscent of the more inwardly focused Schubert piano sonata, so later romantic kind of style there. Guastavino dedicated this work to his late brother, who he had lost to suicide. And Benjamin says he thinks that this can not help but give a particular weight, not just to the gestures of conflict in the movement, but even remarkably to the frequently interwoven moments of tenderness. So it's all for Benjamin here about contrast of emotion. Now, to his guitar. Benjamin's stepfather bought the Daniel Friedrich guitar that he plays today. And he bought it in Paris when he was studying there. This is Benjamin's stepfather in the 1970s. And it's the first guitar that Benjamin ever touched, albeit very briefly. And then his stepdad was also his first guitar teacher, although he'd become a French professor after immigrating to the US. And Benjamin has very fond memories of his stepfather playing on this guitar when he was little, and he's very honored and grateful to him for the opportunity to have his relationship with that instrument now. His favorite practice partner is a little Scottish fold cat named Mercedes, and his favorite type of pizza is pepperoni. So a very interesting guitar that we're all very intrigued to hear, and here is Benjamin's performance.
My name is Benjamin Gascon, and this is my submission for the Classical Guitar Retreat Senior Competition. I will be performing the 6 variations on an original theme, Opus 20 by Mauro Giuliani, followed by the first movement of the first sonata for guitar by Carlos Guastavino.
Wow, don't want to clap too loud in case people are listening with headphones, you know. Wow, what a performance from Benjamin. Matthew, what are your thoughts there, initial thoughts?
Well, I think one of the best things that we can say about a competition overall is when it's very, very difficult to make a call. Ben's playing is exquisite, masterful, focused. I really felt like there was a direction for every line, for every phrase. He had an intention behind everything that he played. It was just about as tight a performance, I think, as one could hope for. So bravo, Benjamin. Well done. Great. The pieces are great too. Terrific selections, and wow, what a bunch of contrast in all of the. The Giuliani itself has a tremendous amount of contrast, but the Guastavinos thematically all over the place too. So way to read the brief, and bravo on playing.
Yeah, absolutely. And Stephen, there was just a lot of poise and great posture and control throughout the whole performance, right?
Oh, absolutely. And it was very well handled, and his fingers were in command of everything at all points, but yet he wasn't fazed by the small things and kept great continuity and, as you say, poise throughout. And he performed, I believe, from Baltimore, not far from Pimlico, where the Preakness was run just yesterday. And it reminds me that scale at the end, the horse is racing to the finish line, and he just had a great demonstration of character and contrast throughout his performance. It was really great.
Yep.
I love that you're all mentioning poise. The elephant in the room, as the chat would address. Also, tremendous poise, grace under pressure, while the sirens are going in the background, because that concentration is no joke while that's happening. So I just, have to give kudos from chat also for that, Benjamin. Svanur, what are your notes here?
Yeah, I actually thought the sirens were here. I was just a bit shocked at the moment, but I thought it was just showed great tactical competency, and just especially the second piece, the Gustavino, was just I just forgot about all the technical stuff, and he just took me on a kind of a trip, and really impressive in that way. Yeah.
Thank you, Svanur. Well, it has what a heat this has been. And again, I do not envy you panelists at all having to choose a top 6 from all of this. We still have one more heat to go, but we have one last performer to hear from today. And we are about to meet Solis Dornan. And I have to give a momentary shout out because Solis is hailing from Los Ranchos, New Mexico, in the United States. And I grew up in New Mexico, so excited to see New Mexico get a little shout out there. He has chosen to play Un Tiempo Fue Itálica Famosa by Joaquin Rodrigo and Forlorn Hope Fancy by John Dowland. He chose to play these pieces because they're both very modern and dissonant, while at the same time invoking ancient feelings and themes, which is very attractive in music. So he says, I'm a lover of history and tradition, which is why I chose classical music to begin with. He says, I play a Michael Timms guitar that I commissioned. He's a luthier who lives in the capital of New Mexico, and New Mexican music and guitars are ingrained in my soul. As a fun fact, you can share with the audience that one time I was chased through the desert at gunpoint, and I was given a medal from the governor of Wyoming, but these are unrelated. And finally, like a true New Mexican, Solis enjoys on his pizza jalapenos or green chilies.
Take 1. Hello, my name is Solis Dornan. I'm recording this for the Classical Guitar Retreat competition. The first piece I'm going to be playing is Un Tiempo Fue Itálica Famosa by Joaquin Rodrigo. Thank you. Next piece I'm going to be playing is Forlorn Hope Fancy by John Dowland.
All right, Solis, New Mexico, representing from Oberlin. Huge contrast between the Dallin and the Rodrigo. Svanur, let's go to you. What are your notes for Solis?
Yeah, like obviously very well. I found it to be very technically able performance, and really impressed with the like voice separation and the feeling of kind of painful gesture of the Dowland, and a very clear voice separation and role of voices. I felt in the first piece he knew what was important, what the thematic, what themes were important. He brought it forward, and those that are not, that are just gestures that are decorating everything. I felt he had this sense of what is what, you know. Don't know if you understand me, but yeah.
Okay, thank you. Matthew Cochran, do you want to elaborate on the what is what?
Yeah, the what is what was very clear. I agree. I think that Solis has a very clear idea about what he wants out of the piece and how he wants to communicate it. And we've seen that a number of times today, and it's a real joy. I think to see such assured playing that sort of represents the personality of the performer, and has excellent facility, and I think it's great. I did have one kind of technical note. In this case, it was actually about the lighting. It was a bit of a distraction that the windows were quite illuminated, and the performer, as a result, was not. And one of the items that I think is important in a medium like this, not only to think about the audio, but also to think about the video and how it's going to be presented. And it looks like a really beautiful room, but maybe moving away from the windows and allowing the windows to maybe provide just a little bit of shadow would be better than putting the performer directly in front of the windows. Consider that for the next time. I mean, this lighting is not playing, and neither is recording, but or rather audio recording. But because this is a very visual medium that we're all kind of involved in here, I think a little bit of thinking about that is worthwhile.
It's absolutely crucial, Matthew. I totally agree, and I think like even if you, as you say, the windows weren't right behind, but he was slightly angled, so you got some of that natural light on Solis. That would be great, especially because, you know, the fingerboard was kind of in darkness. So the repertoire that he chose is not just sonically entertaining and exciting; it's visually exciting. These big scalic runs, these big arpeggios, and you know, we know because we are guitarists, but the layperson, the audience out there, they're wowed by the physical gesture. Sure. That is a very intrinsic part of the performance gesture, and we want to see these things and them to be illuminated. And I felt you've hit the nail on the head there with, yes, it's not judging the playing, but it's judging the presentation, and that is a key thing as well. And just even maybe sometimes when I was watching Solis play, his interaction with the camera, like he would look dead down the barrel of the gun, right down the camera. And that kind of breaks a wall, you know, like when you're watching it, it kind of breaks through, and it can be, you're looking for something, but of course we're watching that come back, and that can create a slightly strange atmosphere sometimes. So I think there's something for Solis to start to consider there about presentation, and I'm delighted you brought it up. Steve, are we being too harsh here, and are we getting away from the music a little bit too much? What were your thoughts listening to Solis?
No, I mean, presentation overall is an important factor, I'm sure, and it's one I myself probably don't think about as much given the state of my office right now and the light behind me. I at least knew to turn on the overhead light today so I don't look like I'm in the shadows like Solis was. But what an incredible performance. Let's not lose fact of the sight that what we heard there was outstanding, very well done, and some difficult repertoire to pull that off. And I was particularly impressed after that great performance of the Rodrigo, that in the Dowland, he was bringing out that line in the almost like a descant line against the scales underneath, and just such ease and facility in that was a really nice start to what will be surely an absolutely masterful performance for him for years to come.
Yeah, it's fantastic with players that go that deep into the music, which I think Solis clearly has. Like, you could see the commitment and how much he's really involved in what he wants to say with the music. Often I find, and this is having been a teacher now for many years, the pulling out the best way to present that in that kind of player is a really important step. So listening, for example, it'll be Stephen Aaron there in Oberlin, and I'm sure he's picking up on it with Solis as well. Figuring out the best way that all your really deep meaning that you're trying to pull out the piece can best be expressed. And then, you know, the majority of the people watching are on the same page as you and really rooting for you when you play. Because, I mean, there was so much commitment and intensity there. Well, folks, we've heard 8 fantastic players in this second heat, and it's just continued on from last night's first heat. We've got one more heat to go, heat number 3, and that is about an hour and a half away. So I need to give my jury a break here. I need to give you as an audience a break. Please make sure to check out in the live streams that are coming up on Gallery Guitar that third heat. It's literally an hour and a half from now, 7 p.m. UK time. Come back, you'll hear another 8 fantastic players and some cracking repertoire. Get behind the players like you did today. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Svanur, Matthew, and Stephen, for your great insights and your feedback for all these young players. And Kate, thanks for being a wonderful co-host as always.
Thank you, Matthew. Such a pleasure. And I love working with all of the judges. Everything I'm hearing is just so educational and wonderful. It's a terrific experience. And one more heat to go. 8 more guitarists in an hour and a half. So,
all right. See you soon.